Good morning, Barry Bryson, and thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes of Word. I thought we'd take a few days to talk about some of the men, or to talk about the men who judged Jesus, Caiaphas, Herod, Antipas, and Pontius Pilate. We'll spend a couple of days talking about Pontius Pilate. We know about these men from each of the Gospels, all four of the Gospels, although again, we get some important detail from John, writing at the end of the first century. John is the one who tells us about Caiaphas, that it was his plan early on that Jesus would die, that Jesus would be someone who died for his own political gain, for the gain of what he considered to be the Jewish people. Caiaphas is the son-in-law of Annas, whom Josephus tells us is the rightful high priest. And Jesus, we're told in John's gospel, listen to Annas first and then to Caiaphas, from Annas to Caiaphas. So it seems like the Jewish people pay a level of respect to Annas as the rightful high priest by giving him priority over Caiaphas, although the Romans, who appointed Caiaphas high priest in the year 18 AD, recognized Caiaphas as the high priest. Josephus paints Caiaphas as one who colluded more often than not with the Romans and with Roman interests in order to further his own interests. Caiaphas is an interesting figure in that in 1990, they were paving a new road in Jerusalem. They found his ossuary. They found his bone box. It was a box about like this, slightly bigger than a bread box, say 18 inches. In length and a foot or so high, and maybe a little bigger than that, where his bones would have been put. The way they put Jesus, in a grave, after the body had decomposed and all that was left were the bones, they'd put those in an ossuary box, and that would then free up that section of the cave for someone else to inhabit until their body decomposed as well. And they found his ossuary in 1990. It was empty. It had no bones in it, just a few bone fragments and some dust. This is not a good guy. I mean, we just know from all four of the Gospels. And as early as the raising of Lazarus, which is a few weeks before the events of Jesus' crucifixion, whenever the high priests hear that Jesus has raised Lazarus from the dead just over in Bethany. This is a man whom everyone knew was dead and had been dead 4 days. That Caiaphas, who was high priest, it's interesting, John says that year, says to them, "You know nothing at all. Don't you take into account it's expedient for you that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation should not perish." He said this not on his own initiative, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus was going to die for the nation. They're up in arms because Jesus has risen to prominence, and he's about to invade the city, with his triumphal entry. But Caiaphas is playing the long game. He's biding his time. He's going to set Jesus up as a martyr and discredit him in front of the people, and at the same time satisfy the Romans. At least that's his evil plan. And of course, whenever Jesus is brought to Caiaphas, Caiaphas finds him guilty. Although they have trouble finding witnesses that agree, based upon Jesus' own saying, they accuse him of blasphemy and they bring him to Pilate. Now, blasphemy of the Jewish God was not a crime punishable by death, not even if you were a Jew. That's why they need Pilate's collusion. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But it says in chapter 19, verse 15, when Pilate makes efforts to release Jesus, and Pilate says, "We have no king, but shall I crucify the King of the Jews?" That he leads the people to say, "We have no other king than Caesar." Such a disingenuous thing for Caiaphas to say. So Caiaphas thinks he's serving himself, but as the word tells us, he's actually serving God's purpose, the role that he's playing. Although he's made his own choice, it's that wonderful passage from Proverbs chapter 16, I think it's verse 7, God has made everything in its time, even for the day of judgment, that no matter what we choose, we are free to make our own choices, but we are not free to interrupt plans. Caiaphas shows up one more time. He's the high priest in Acts chapter 4. Peter and Paul are brought before the Sanhedrin. He's the high priest then, and miracles are still being done in the name of Jesus Christ. He learns that his plans did not work out the way he planned them to. Well, thank you for joining me talking about Caiaphas. Tomorrow we'll talk about Herod Antipas. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you tomorrow.